most of us don't have a bad day. We have bad moments in a day that make us feel like the day was bad, but that's not true, and we should not let our children think that their whole day was bad when they only had one period of the day that was stressful. The rest of the day was actually quite normal.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, today on the Celebrate Kids podcast, in this daily segment, Facing the Dark, I want to look at this topic called dry texting. Now, dry texting is when people respond to a text conversation with just a one-word answer, and they don't really carry on the conversation. It's when my mom texts me K, or when my wife says, got it, and there's no conversation that's going on. They don't even really kind of engage it. It's just really dry, and they're kind of over it. Some are saying that this actually is making kids conflict averse, and it builds bad habits in their communication. Dr. Kathy, I think that this is interesting because I'm a firm believer in practice. I like this idea of building muscles. And when we practice and when we kind of build muscles for a certain thing, it makes us naturally go to that thing. Is it a problem to let our kids simply dry text or have dry conversations with us? I just think of like when I pick them up from school and I say, hey, how was your school day? And their answer is good. And then we just kind of leave that. And it just is the answer that they can give in that moment. Is that a problem? Or should we dig in a little bit more and have them explain? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, in that example, I want them to explain. We actually have taught in some of our work here better questions than, how was school? So what intrigued you today? Who did you help today? What do you hope you never have to talk about again? Asking different questions can help the responses be more creative. Sometimes when I ask children, how was your day? Great. I'll sometimes say, what made it great? Because I don't want them to dry text or even dry speak, where it becomes just this common answer and they don't give any thought to it. Well, let's push back a little bit. The whole day was bad, like it was a horrible day. Well, because I've often taught that most of us don't have a bad day. We have bad moments in a day that make us feel like the day was bad, but that's not true. And we should not let our children think that their whole day was bad when they only had one period of the day that was stressful. The rest of the day was actually quite normal. So I think we push back a bit. I think we don't want them to get in the habit of not honoring the person. Because see, Wayne, I think it's a respect issue. I think it's a character issue. And I address this in the book Parent Differently. I think it's disrespectful. I think it's dishonoring. I think it's actually a lack of self-respect that I'm not going to answer the question. I don't want my mom or my dad to know. Like, that's just silly.
Dr. Kathy, I think it is a respect issue. It ends up being a thing where I don't really want to go into this topic and you can't make me kind of thing. And it's not even like paying attention or being conscious or respectful of the other person. And I do really think that conversation is a respectful engagement. It's a learned skill that we help our kids with. How can we better teach our kids to have conversation? What if our kids don't like to converse? Is there some things that we could do to help them build that?
I think so. Let me back up a minute first and say that, you know, I didn't know there was something called dry texting. I didn't know that that was the name of this thing, and I just wanna acknowledge that you and I do that. Like, I'll text you a paragraph or I'll text you a half a dozen sentences about something, and you reply, "Sounds great." Like, that's your dry texting reply, and I like it because I'm not asking for an essay back from you, but I love that you acknowledge you got it. Because there is a nervousness sometime because as busy as you are with I can't even imagine, Wayne, how many texts you get in a day, not just work related, but, you have another you work at the school part-time, you've got, your large family. So thank you for dry texting me. And I'm glad that you don't think I need long answers because, we're gonna talk about it if it needs to be talked about later. So dry texting, I think, has a place, but it has a place. The conversation we want our kids to have has a place. How do we better teach it? We model conversations. So, you and your spouse or you and a roommate get home from work, how was work? Fine. What did you do? The same old stuff. Where'd you go to lunch? The usual. That's not a conversation. That's a badly done interrogation. And again, if you've used all of your words already for the day, like, I get that. If you don't wanna think another thought, I get that. If you're busy and distracted, I get that, and yet you've chosen to have a family. And ideally, there's honor that's, given and there's respectful conversation. So maybe we have to get better at the time we do it and, again, the kinds of questions that we ask. And I think we honor our roommate, our spouse, our kids by giving them the answers. Because you know what? if we don't answer our kids' questions, they're gonna stop asking, and they're gonna assume dad had a good day, did nothing, and went to the usual place for lunch. So why should I ask? And then they miss out on a day you had that was amazing.
Yeah, Dr. Kathy, I think that's so interesting because, there's so many things about my day that I think are so underwhelming. And so, like, "Oh, this is just mundane." And then we sit down at the table and we're going around and we're doing, the high-low buffalo. That's kind of how we do it.
I
What's
love
high?
it.
What's a low? And what's something totally random that happened? And I start talking, and all of a sudden, like, one of my sons says, "Oh, dad, I love what you do. That sounds so interesting." And I'm like, "No, I literally have the most boring life ever." And he's like, "No, this is so fun. I wanna hear more about it." It's just kind of it's funny to me because I do think that, like, conversation is this learned skill, and at the same time, we're tired. Parents come home tired. A lot of us are having kids, and, like, in our life, we have kids and we're old. Like, we feel old. We're, like, in our 40s, and we've got five-year-old twins. It's exhausting every night. And at the same time, I think that there's something that is powerful when I do, a little bit take a deep breath or go get a glass of water and come out from it and say, "Okay, we're gonna have a conversation now. I didn't go to the normal place. I went to my favorite place, and I didn't just get the normal meal. I got the thing that I always get because I really like it. They make it really well there." Like, there is something to that, right? What does it do to our kids when we push through even, like, that barrier of, "I don't wanna have this conversation. I've used all my words," but we push through it, especially, I think, kind of in light of them forming and building their identity. What are your thoughts there?
Exactly. I mean, I think they feel important. For instance, no one in the audience knows this, but yesterday we received an email with a potential cover for my new book. And it's an exciting day, and the email even said, "I've got exciting news," like, that was the subject line. Like, to see the professional graphic designers take the concepts and try to put it on the cover, like, I couldn't do that job. I can write a book, but don't make me design the cover, like, different skill set. So I would hope that you would say to your kids, "No, we got an email with, the potential cover for Dr. Kathy's new book." I bet your kids would have said, "Can we see it?" And now you have a daughter who's an artist, who's a gifted, she's not an artist professionally, she's an artist as a
Well,
teenage girl.
she is professionally because that's what she does all day long, and she eats and sleeps it. So
I
it's
love it.
kind of a way to
I
win
love
it.
it.
Yeah.
And, I think it would be interesting to get her take on it. You could actually show her, the 2 covers that we were sent and ask her for an opinion. I would be interested in that. So, to think that they might care about something and it honors them and it helps them see the complexity of your job. I know that 3 of your kids work for us part-time doing really skills. So, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I love that you said identity formation. I think it's in our conversation that we discover who we are. Like, when we have highlight and low light of the day, and the highlight is consistently music or consistently art or consistency, the consistent answer is fellowship, or the consistent answer is, "I helped my teacher." We begin to learn something about our kids and the way that they think they're defined, and we realize, man, if they always talk more about the low light than the highlight, or they have a critical negative perspective on their day and themselves, we gotta enter into that. So we learn a lot about ourselves and about our kids in our conversations.
Dr. Kathy, I think that there's a lot that happens inside of our family for that. But the reality is, a lot of the things that happen for our kids during the day also reinforce their habits and even the way they interact with the world. And oftentimes, this reality for dry texting is something that is so prevalent in their life, right? They have friends that are dry texting them, and so they think that that's normal. If our kids have these friends and even are in this kind of setting that where dry texting is happening and we don't want it to happen, what would you see would be a good way for us to engage that with our kids to give them support and encouragement that, while that might be something that's happening out in your culture, that shouldn't happen, and we should, like, push through that. What would be a good way to kind of do that with our kids? Because in my opinion, they are practicing relating to the world and relation skills, and dry texting is not a great way to communicate, right? So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, your question is a good question again. I think I would say this. I think dry texting is okay sometimes. Like, when you dry text me back, "Got it. Sounds great." Like, that's all I needed to hear was that you heard me and you're in agreement with my plan to spend my afternoon this way, or, whatever it is. So I wonder if it's okay for a kid to dry text, "Hey, meet at the park at 4." Okay. Like, that's fine. But there's other times when dry texting shouldn't be okay. And then we teach them to push back. We teach them a great follow-up question. Hey, where we make a statement, tell me more, or please elaborate, or what exactly do you mean? Every once in a while, like the other day, you did dry text me. And then before I had time to ask a follow-up question, you texted again the detail I needed. I don't know if you remember that. I think in a
It was
text.
on purpose because I totally noticed it. I thought, "Oh, I shouldn't do that. I should text her back and let her know." Yeah, totally
Yeah,
happened.
because I think I had given you 3 options. And you said, "Sounds great." I'm like, "What sounds great?" Like option 1, 2, or 3, you know? Because you can develop this habit of passive reading. I think
Right.
even you and I can do that.
Well, and I just thought that you should decide. I think that all 3 options are great. What do you wanna do? That was kinda but I should have said
Ah,
that.
but I asked you. And so, yeah, no, and this can be so I think these like what you and I are doing right now, we should do in front of kids. And we should help them understand when is it okay and when is it problematic because we might have missed something or it might feel like the other person is unimportant. So what do we model? What do we talk about? And I think we ask our kids, how does it make you feel? And they might legitimately say, "Hey, there's nothing wrong with it. I do it too." And then we say, "If you were in person, would you do it?" And we don't want you to develop a habit, especially when you're with grandma and grandpa and your Sunday school teacher, etc.
As Dr. Kathy was talking today, it reminded me of a passage that comes out of 1 Samuel chapter 3. I'll begin reading at verse 1. The boy Samuel ministered before the Lord under Eli. In those days, the word of the Lord was rare. There weren't many visions. One night, Eli, whose eyes were becoming so weak he could barely see, was lying down in his usual place. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and young Samuel was lying down in the house of the Lord, where the ark of God was. The Lord called to Samuel, and Samuel answered, "Here am I." He ran to Eli and said, "Here I am. You called me?" But Eli said, "I did not call you. Go back and lie down." So he went back and lied down. Again, the Lord called to Samuel, and Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am. You called me?" "My son," Eli said, "I did not call you. Go back and lie down." Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord. The word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. And the third time the Lord called to Samuel, and Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am. You called me?" And then Eli realized that the Lord was calling the boy. So Eli told Samuel, "Go and lie down, and if he calls you again, speak. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." So Samuel went and lied down in that place. The Lord came and stood there, calling, as he did the other times, "Samuel, Samuel." And then Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant is listening." So this happens around 1050 BC at Shiloh, before Israel had a temple or a king. And hearing the Lord was really a rare occurrence. Prophetic silence had come over the land of Israel, and no one heard from the Lord directly. Young Samuel was serving under Eli, whose sons were abusing the priestly office, and God breaks this long silence by calling a child. Not the seasoned priesthood, not the learned elders. This repeated calling of Samuel really frames a teaching in a moment about discerning God's voice. Samuel's first assignment really ends up being hard. It's a hard truth for Eli, showing that true communication really does take courage. I think inside of this account, we see that quiet invites clarity, and we need to, as parents, really create space for quietness in our house, where the house is dim and kids can ask and notice that they can hear from us and have our attention, and also might have time and space where they can hear from God. One of the cool things about what Eli does with Samuel is he teaches him a response line. He says, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." I wonder if in our parenting, if we need to also teach our kids what a response line looks like. We talked about that a little bit today, that maybe there are some tactics or habits that we should build in with conversation with our kids. But what about with the Lord? Do we teach our kids to listen to the Lord? Or do we teach them that they can just give a quick answer or kind of shut some things down or just say a quick prayer before breakfast or dinner? There might need to be a response line that we teach our kids, and really to encourage then some tough honesty, to celebrate the times when God does speak and gives us an answer, write it down and highlight it. And in that, teach our kids that sometimes it takes a lot of courage to listen, and it takes a lot of courage also then to follow through with what God tells us. I think this whole conversation is really interesting because it drives a narrative that we need to be people who are attentive and not people that just kind of say "K" when somebody says something to us, but we text back and understanding and engage in conversation and build habits that really drive us deeper to listening longer and also hearing each other and relating to each other better. I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast, this daily segment, Facing the Dark. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name is Wayne Stender. We're looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.